Welcome back, gang. Today we're going to be talking about how climate affects us, or the effects of climate, how climate really dictates to us as humans where we can live, what kinds of things we can grow, the houses we live in, and those sorts of things. So let's talk for a few minutes about, first of all, agriculture. Okay, so think about what agriculture is. Agriculture is essentially the raising or the growing of food to feed us. Okay, so agriculture really dictates what crops can be grown, or I'm sorry, climate really dictates what crops can be grown. Obviously, in a cold weather climate, you're not going to be growing bananas because bananas don't grow in cold weather. Same thing in a low latitude warm climate, you're not going to grow a whole lot of potatoes because they don't grow there. Another example of climate dictating what crops are grown is rice. For example, rice needs lots of rain and lots of warm weather, and so it's a crop that's ideally suited for Asia or other tropical warm climates or subtropical climates. Minute rice that we eat here in the United States, and I'm sure other places eat it as well, is actually the stuff grown here in the U.S. The stuff eaten here is grown in Texas. Again, it's a warm subtropical climate, gets lots of rain, and so it's ideally suited for that. So one, climate dictates agriculture and what crops can be grown. Two, it also helps dictate clothing. Primarily, what is worn, both in materials, clothing that is worn, and in the colors that are worn. So let's talk about materials first. The materials that are worn are heavily dictated by a region. Now, one, it dictates, this is related to agriculture, and what animals are grown or raised there and what crops are grown there. But it also helps to dictate the materials themselves. For example, wool is very warm. And so wool is found in cool weather climates such as Scotland and any high latitude climate because wool is very warm, very insulating. It's very resistant to wind and very resistant to water. So wool is warm in cool climates or cold climates such as Canada, northern Canada, Alaska, Scotland, even in Russia to a lesser degree. Okay? Cotton is very cool and light, and it also grows really well in warm weather climates. So cotton is a lighter fabric that is cool, that's worn in warm weather climates such as the American South, India, and Egypt, and it's also a prevalent crop grown in the American South, India, and Egypt. Now, not only does it dictate what materials you're wearing, but it also dictates the color. In cold climates, people wear dark colors. Dark colors are worn in cool weather climates because the dark colors absorb the heat. Along the same lines, light colors are worn in warm weather climates. Think about your dad's Hawaiian shirt, or most dads have a Hawaiian shirt. They're ugly and obnoxious. They have really bright colors and these really ugly patterns. Well, those bright colors help reflect the heat, and the shirts are typically loose. They're not tight-fitting, but they're very loose, and so people wear those in warm weather climates because the colors reflect heat and the clothing is also loose. Well, another way that climate affects us is in the housing and the types of housing we will live in. And housing really is made to fit the area. For example, this is an A-frame chalet. If you look at the roof of the house right here, it's broad, flat roof, angled away from the entrances and most of the exits, because in an area like the Alps that gets lots and lots of snow, you want that snow to slide right off and away from the house. And that's why chalets have broad, simple, plain roofs just like that. If you were a kid drawing a house, that's probably the kind of roof that you would draw. Shoot, I would still draw a roof that looked like that because the snow would shed right off. In Siberia, or some regions, other regions, homes are commonly found on what are called pilings or stilts. They're often found in Siberia or even in coastal regions. In Siberia, which is in eastern Russia, they have to dig down deep and through the permafrost. Then they put homes on pilings there. They put homes on pilings so that they can find sturdy ground to build the foundation of the house. You don't want a house that's constantly, or a foundation that freezes, thaws, freezes, thaws, freezes, thaws. And so you have to make sure that that house won't fall if that happens. Okay, so you got to dig way down into the ground to get that. Well, in coastal areas, they put houses up like this, like in the Outer Banks or in Florida, so that when it does flood, when you get high tides or hurricanes, and the water comes really far inland, they don't flood the house. And so that's why you build houses up on pilings or stilts. The Inuit in Alaska build igloos. So that's an igloo. The reason they build igloos is twofold. One, it's a good insulator. Snow makes a good insulator. And two, it's a readily available building source. Now, Inuit don't live in the igloos full time, but many times when they're off hunting on their hunting trips, that's what they build to house themselves and to keep themselves warm. And nextly, yurts are often found in Mongolia. Yurts are a tent-like structure found in Mongolia and Central Asia, and the nomadic peoples there, nomadic meaning the people that wander around, move around from place to place, live in yurts. Yurts are still a very common home for people to live in on the Asian steppe, the Central Asian steppe. And again, they're big circular buildings that are a lot like tents. They're not exactly like tents like we think of in Native Americans in the United States, but yurts are common because you can break them down and move them very easily. In the South Pacific, in warm tropical climates in the South Pacific, some in the Caribbean, you would find a shelter called a fail. A fail is a shelter that many people in the South Pacific or other tropical climates live in. A fail, it looks here, this is kind of a one-person fail in the picture here, but basically a fail is a roof with legs. Okay, so you've got a roof with legs going down. Now, if you think about it, if you're in a tropical, warm, really warm climate, you want to have that so that the wind blows through and keeps you nice and cool. Now, when it rains, they have sidings or things on the side, walls that they can pull down, kind of like shades. But you want the wind to be able to move through because you don't want to keep all that warm air next to you. And the really big ones are called epic fails. That's a joke, by the way. All right, so now climate also dictates several natural hazards to us. Climate also dictates several natural hazards that affect us and humans that live there. In the Atlantic Ocean, there are hurricanes. A hurricane is a tropical storm that's in the Atlantic or east of the international date line. They occur mostly in the late summer and early fall, and they hit the southeastern and eastern portions of the United States in the Gulf Coast. They're created when warm water heats up, regional winds blow it over to us from Africa, and that's generally where we get our hurricanes. Another name for a hurricane is a typhoon. A typhoon is a tropical storm that occurs in the Pacific or west of the international date line. They're the exact same thing. They're warm. They're storms that occur in warm ocean water or over warm ocean water and then run into land. They're hurricanes or typhoons. In the Indian Ocean, okay, I don't have this on the slide, but in the Indian Ocean, they have something called cyclone. Again, in the Indian Ocean, it's simply a different name for a tropical storm occurring in the Indian Ocean. That's the only difference. Hurricanes, typhoons, and cyclones are all the exact same thing. Monsoons are a little bit different, though. Monsoons are seasonal wind patterns that affect South and Southeast Asia. So you can see here how they affect South Asia and Southeast Asia here. Regional winds push the winds this way, and because they blow over warm water, they push a lot of warm rain over to the South Asian subcontinent, to the Indian subcontinent. In the winter, they blow the other way. In the summer, they bring a lot of heavy rain and a lot of flooding, okay, and they cause massive flooding, particularly in this area right here called Bangladesh. They cause a lot of flooding in Bangladesh because Bangladesh is where both the Brahmaputra River and where the Brahmaputra and I can't recall the name of the other river there come out and empty into the Bay of Bengal. And so they cause a lot of flooding there. Okay, last but not least are tornadoes. Tornadoes are violent storms that exist primarily in the United States. They occur in other parts of the world too, but most tornadoes that happen in the world occur in the United States. And if you ask me in class, I'll explain more why that occurs. But I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you all later.